I'm old enough to remember when it was Republicans in disarray, when Kevin McCarthy
Yeah.
was the House Speaker, when Republicans in the House were publicly going against him. I had two House Democrats on my show earlier last week and earlier this week. Both didn't have, the best support of Chuck Schumer at that time, criticizing his move there. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, when he was asked about it last week about Chuck Schumer's leadership, he kept saying, next question. Earlier this week, he said that Chuck Schumer should remain as Senate Minority Leader. What's that new leadership, though, you're looking for? You mentioned some names, Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, I believe. Who are you looking for to meet this moment?
Well, the reality is that it doesn't matter the person. What matters is that it's someone, Chuck, I'm a sports guy, and the best sports analogy here is that Chuck Schumer has pretty much lost the locker room when it comes to Democrats, not only in the Senate, but throughout Congress, as well as, nationally, those people who are politically interested and identify as Democrats. Chuck Schumer's lost the locker room. And so I don't know who that presents an opportunity for in the Senate Democratic Caucus. Remember, it's got to be someone who is a national figure, who is a prolific fundraiser, and someone who the caucus has faith in can reclaim the majority. I also think that, again, there's an interesting opportunity for someone to come forth with a populist-based but Democratic-leaning message that might not even be from politics altogether. So you got to look at people who are external, such as, the extraordinary influence of the podcasters who are out there on the Republican side, who are, shaping policy in a very real way. You've got to look at public figures and people who the Democratic Party has kind of, to be honest, turned their nose up at in the past. I think Hakeem Jeffries still has the locker room on the House side, but it looks like, and we understand the difficult nature of this vote, but it very much looks like Chuck Schumer doesn't really understand the vibe. He doesn't know what time it is around his party nationally. And when you don't have a president, the Senate Majority Leader is de facto the leader of his party. It doesn't feel like he understands where Democrats' minds are enough to continue on in this important role.
And to your point, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had House Democrats unified. All but one voted against that CR. Chuck Schumer
Yep.
had just a handful of Democrat votes for the CR. So I think that's a really interesting point. It seems like Democrats in the country have lost the locker room. The approval rating is really at an all-time low. NBC says only 27% of people have a positive view of the party. Blue Rose Research, which conducted over 25 million voter interviews last year, found these stats. Gen Z is more conservative than millennials. Those who get their news from more non-traditional ways are more right-leaning. Higher turnout would have helped the GOP and hurt Democrats. There's been a massive swing in immigrant voters to Trump. Almost every almost every demographic moved more right in the last election, and Democrats are losing non-white voters. So you hear this, that's all bad news for Democrats. Where do they go from here?
You know,
It's $1 million question, really.
It is. It is. It's very difficult to say, but I will tell you that the future of the leadership of the party is going to have to look different. It's going to have to entrust and empower people who have traditionally not been included in those leadership and power discussions. They will be younger, they will be more people of color, but at the same time, it's a tightrope to walk to include folks demographically who have not been included and elevated to leadership, while also making it clear that this is not a party strictly of identity politics, because there's a whole lot of non-folks of color in middle America who want to talk about the kitchen issues, but don't understand that the Republican Party is not best for them on issues such as Medicare and Medicaid, and frankly, the price of eggs. The Trump economy has not been good for middle class and lower middle class and working class Americans of any color on these items, but they have owned the narrative and they've owned the messaging. And the reality is that Democrats have no single individual as magnetic as President Trump is, whether or not I agree with his politics or his policies. We have no single individual, frankly, who is that individually powerful. And so it's got to come from a coalition of voices. I don't know that Democrats should be looking to a one person as much as you should be looking to a one unifying message and pointing out all of the inconsistencies in Trump messaging, which is like, yeah, I get it. The bravado is cool. And the Teslas out front of the White House is flashy, but it does not translate to moving the ball forward for your working class family.
When you're thinking of that unified message, where exactly does that message go? Because there's been some internal debate, according to my conversations, of Do we go more progressive? Do we go more left? Do we go more centrist? You're seeing this with Governor Gavin Newsom, who is historically very liberal. On his podcast, he's talking to right-wing superstars like Steve Bannon, like Charlie Kirk. He's ceding ground to them when they're really not moving an inch on their positions. That doesn't have high approval ratings, but what is that unified message?
I think that Democrats have to have the wherewithal to kind of come out of our ivory towers and realize that there are multiple different messages for multiple different constituencies. When you have a country of 300 million people, diverse geographies, diverse ages, diverse nationalities and ethnicities, there is not one message that applies all the way, but there has to be a through line of equality, opportunity, and fairness. There has to be a through line of, if you believe in this basic fair set of policies, that everyone gets a shot, that this is not an economy for the wealthy, then you and your family will have an opportunity to advance the ball in this generation and the next for your family. And you communicate that to different people in different ways. There does not need to be one Democratic Bible. There does need to be one Democratic through line of talk. And I'll just tell you, I don't think that talking to Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, frankly, is the way. I'm quite disappointed in Gavin Newsom, because we know 10 years into this Trump world experiment and this hard right experiment, particularly in the media, that the Charlie Kirks and the Steve Bannons of the world don't mean the best in terms of equal opportunity for all American citizens. So I'm a little disappointed in Gavin on that. But Democrats have got to get past this highfalutin notion of, one voice, one message at all times, speaking to everybody, because we're too diverse of a nation to require that anymore in our politics.